All right, so get this. We're going deep on a topic that's, well, it's a lot more complicated than you might think. Valentine's Day.
Interesting.
Yeah, you sent over these clips from a podcast. It's called What is Valentine's Day Really? And honestly, I'm kind of hooked.
I can see why. What struck me right away was how the holiday mixes these ancient Roman customs with Christian legends. I mean, there's so much history there. It's not just about the stuff we do today, you know?
No, definitely not just about like roses and those fancy dinners.
Yeah.
But wait, hold on. The podcast mentioned this Roman festival, Lupercalia, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they like sacrifice a goat
Yeah.
and then use its hide to whip women? Something about fertility.
That's the one. Lupercalia. It was a festival in the middle of February. And yeah, they had some, well, let's just say unconventional rituals. And then as Christianity started to spread, they took parts of Lupercalia and brought them into how they celebrated St. Valentine.
Whoa, okay. So you're telling me the story about Saint Valentine, defying the emperor to do secret marriages for soldiers, that whole thing that's somehow mixed up with a pagan fertility festival? That's wild. Talk about a twist.
It really shows you how traditions change over time, how they blend and transform. Pretty fascinating, right?
Okay, so we've got these ancient roots. That's super interesting. But the podcast, it also brings up something we deal with now, like has Valentine's Day just become another holiday about buying stuff? They talk about how much money people spend on gifts and like creating these picture perfect moments, especially for social media.
Yeah, they actually quoted a study in there. It said that people are spending like 40% more on Valentine's Day gifts because of social media just in the last 5 years. It's got to be a lot of pressure, right?
For sure. Like if you
Yeah.
go on Instagram on Valentine's Day, it feels like everyone's competing to be the most romantic. And it makes you wonder like how much of it is real and how much is just for show. Does that ever get to you?
It's definitely something to think about. I mean, all that commercial stuff can it can overshadow what should be genuine, like expressing love and really appreciating someone.
Totally. And speaking of genuine expression, the podcast talks about some other ways to celebrate Valentine's Day. Ways that aren't about spending a ton of money, more about meaningful things.
Yeah, one of the ideas they had was like volunteering together for a cause you both care about, connecting with each other while you're doing something good.
That's amazing. It totally shifts the focus, right? Instead of material things, it's about shared values and experiences. Oh, and they mentioned something else too. Galentine's Day.
Right. Celebrating Galentine's Day with your friends. It takes the pressure off, all that romantic stuff, and it lets you appreciate those close friendships.
Such a good idea. It reminds you that Valentine's Day, it doesn't have to be just about romantic love. You can celebrate all the important relationships you have.
Yeah, it's cool to think about Valentine's Day being bigger than just romance.
Right. The podcast really gets into that whole idea, like celebrating love in all its forms, romantic, platonic, family love, even self-love.
Exactly. And that's powerful because, so much of the world focuses on romantic relationships.
Right.
It's like those are the most important ones. But Valentine's Day could be like a chance to broaden things a bit. Think about what love really is and where it shows up in our lives.
It reminds you that we're surrounded by all kinds of love, even if we don't always see it,
Absolutely.
Like, think about the love from a good friend or the support you get from your family or even, like, just taking care of yourself. That's love, too, right?
It totally is. And when we celebrate all those kinds of love,
Yeah.
we create a Valentine's Day that feels, I don't know, it feels more real, more inclusive.
More like us.
Exactly.
Okay, so if we strip away all the commercial stuff, the pressure to buy gifts, all of that,
Yeah.
what are we left with? Like, what's the real heart of Valentine's Day?
The podcast host and their guests, they said something that really stuck with me. They said Valentine's Day shouldn't be about just one day of these big showy gestures. It's about making genuine connections something you focus on all year round.
So it sounds like Valentine's Day can be whatever we want it to be.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy into the pressure.
Right.
You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. You find what feels real to you.
They actually had this great analogy in the podcast. They said it's like we've each been given a blank canvas.
Okay.
And we can paint our own picture of Valentine's Day. We don't have to follow anybody else's outlines.
I love that. But let's be honest here. Valentine's Day, it's not always, hearts and flowers. the podcast, they talked about some downsides too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right, yeah.
They talked about like the money part, that pressure to spend can be a real burden.
Totally.
And then you've got all these unrealistic expectations that come from, you know, from social media, from
Yeah.
society in general.
Hmm.
And that can lead to disappointment.
And for some people, it's like a painful reminder. If they're single
Yeah.
or going through a breakup, it highlights that love and relationships, well, they're complicated.
Really are. And that's where it comes back to you making your own meaning for the day. You've got the power to focus on what's good while still being aware of the potential downsides.
So instead of getting caught up in buying expensive gifts,
Yeah.
it's about choosing to focus on like those little acts of kindness and appreciation.
Yes. Those small things can mean so much more in the end because it's about really connecting with people,
Right.
not just going through the motions.
So how do we take all of this
Yeah.
and use it in our own lives?
The podcast, they really stress that Valentine's Day, it can be a chance to grow, to look at our relationships and see
Yeah.
if we can be more present, more expressive.
It's like a yearly checkup.
Yes.
But for our hearts,
Mhm.
a time to look at how we give and receive love, and maybe even challenge ourselves to be more open, more affectionate.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just about one day. It's
Yeah.
about taking that feeling, that intention, and carrying it with us throughout the whole year.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive on Valentine's Day, what are some of the big takeaways you hope people will remember?
I think the biggest one is that Valentine's Day can be a chance to, like, redefine what love means to us
Mm.
and then celebrate it in a way that feels right, that feels authentic and meaningful.
It's about looking past all that commercial stuff
Yeah.
and all the expectations that society throws at us
Yeah.
and rediscovering the real heart of the holiday, which is connection and appreciation.
And when you do that,
Yes.
there's so much freedom, isn't there? We're not stuck doing things just because of tradition or because of what other people are doing.
We get to choose.
Exactly. We create a Valentine's Day that actually reflects what we value.
Totally. Maybe this deep dive will even inspire some people to try new ways of celebrating love,
Yeah.
not just on Valentine's Day, but throughout the year. Yeah, who knows? Maybe somebody out there will hear this and get inspired to learn more about those ancient Roman rituals. I mean, can you imagine bringing that up at your Valentine's Day party?
That would definitely get people talking. But speaking of celebrating, I think this deep dive has really given us all something to think about, like about how we each approach Valentine's Day.
It's true. It's easy to just go with the flow, but when you actually stop and think about what it means to you, that's powerful.
It is. It's about those tough questions, right? Like, am I celebrating in a way that's real, that's true to who I am? Am I being genuine when I show love? Or am I just doing what I think I'm supposed to do?
It all comes back to that blank canvas, like the podcast said. We can paint our own picture of Valentine's Day. Nobody else gets to make the rules for us.
That's such a good way to think about it. It reminds us that even with all the complicated stuff, the contradictions, Valentine's Day can be a chance to grow, to understand love like on a deeper level.
I know I've definitely started to see Valentine's Day differently. It's not just, a Hallmark holiday. It's a chance to look at my own values, to make choices about how I want to celebrate love.
I'm right there with you. And for me, the biggest thing I've realized is that love, all those different kinds of love, they deserve to be celebrated. Whether it's romantic love, the bond you have with family and friends, or even the love you have for yourself, it makes life richer in so many ways.
Okay, so before we wrap up completely, let's leave our listeners with one last thought to chew on. What if you could rewrite the rules of Valentine's Day? What would you change? How would you make it more real, more inclusive, more meaningful for everybody?
That's a great question to end on. It really encourages everyone to take what we've talked about today and think about how it applies to their own lives. It's about shaping your own experience of love and celebration.
Because when you get down to it, Valentine's Day, it's kind of like love itself. It's a journey. It's a chance to learn and grow, to connect with yourself and with the world around you in ways that are deeper, more meaningful. And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.